And hello, everyone. Welcome to Teachers Talk Live. Today we will be talking about social media and what we can do with social media in the classroom, what has been done with social media in the classroom, what is coming up with social media. So all this stuff we'll be talking about fully with amazing guests. Welcome to Teachers Talk Live with Oscar Skilla-Staton and some really cool people discussing social media. So let's go ahead and begin. Let's go ahead and introduce the lady in the panel. So go ahead, Carrie.
I am Carrie Botham. I am a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade extended resource special education teacher. Like a super long title, right? In the northwest suburbs of Illinois. And I'm on my iPad, so I don't have a lower third. And I'm on Twitter at @HeckAwesome.
Nice. And next we have Don.
Hello, Don Wettrick. I'm from Indianapolis, Indiana. I'm a high school innovation teacher at Noblesville High School and have written a book called Pure Genius, Building a Culture of Collaboration.
Nice. Welcome to the show. Joe, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Joe Young. I am in a new position this school year. I'm a math and STEAM coach, or TOSA, teacher on special assignment. I've taught 1st, 2nd, 5th grades. And I'm excited to be here to share my previous experience with getting students to get on social media.
Very nice. And next we have Matt. If you could take off mute. Yeah, great.
Yes, sir. Gladly. Hi, I'm Matt Miller. I've been a high school Spanish teacher for 11 years. I am also the author of a book called Ditch That Textbook, which is all about using creativity and technology to engage students and also to help you change the way that you think about education. And so I am also super excited to be here with this fine panel of guests.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you for joining. Really appreciate it. Zach?
My name is Zach Clancy. I teach middle school special education in Denver. I'm also a doctoral candidate at the University of Northern Colorado, and I do a podcast about education called Teacher Talk with Zach Clancy.
Very nice. So before we begin, I want to go ahead and remind everyone that you can tweet with the hashtag EduLive, if you guys know about Twitter. And we also have a chat box on teachcow.com that you can use to talk to us live and interact with the show. So we are going to go ahead and begin. The first question, open question that I have for you guys is if you could share your personal experience with social media as far as how you use it in the classroom, outside the classroom, and what have you learned from it? Who wants to begin?
I'll start. I remember this a couple of years back, and I got to somebody just demanded almost at gunpoint get me on Twitter, and I thought it was the worst idea in the world because a lot of teachers were not showboaters, and so I thought it was just a horrible idea. And I'll always remember because when I got on it, when I got back home, I was at a conference, and when I got back home, my librarian said, "Oh, I saw you got on Twitter. You have to follow this guy named Don Goebel." And I'll always remember this because at the time I taught broadcasting and documentary filmmaking, and I thought we were pretty good, and we were for Indiana. And then I saw this guy, and I tweeted at him, and I was like, "Hey, you've got really good stuff." And deep down inside, I was jealous, right? This wasn't collaboration Don Wettrick yet. This is pre-Twitter, right? And so he got back with me instantly, and like over the course of the next 20 minutes, he ended up DMing me, and he calls me at school, and he sends me this email of everything he had learned over 20 years. And that, literally in my first couple days on Twitter, that embodied what Twitter meant to me, is that instead of it being a thing where we were showboating, we were exchanging ideas. And in this case, there wasn't any exchanging ideas. He was just flat out giving me stuff because I wasn't as good as he was. But if that isn't a typical embodiment of Twitter I don't know what is,
That is really cool. So what kind of stuff did he provide for you?
Oh my gosh. Shot sheets, tips, advice, rubrics. I mean, I had been teaching the broadcasting class for maybe 3 years, and he had been doing it for about 20. And like literally, I became a better teacher in those 5 minutes. I'll like to this day follow him. Don Goebel is his name. I think it's D Goebel 2001, and I'm still indebted to him because that was the first. Even though somebody else brought me to Twitter, there, you know, it was a couple days later that, you know, somebody like that reached out to me, and just to this day, I, you know, learn from him, and then many others too, and that's been the great thing, is you can connect with people, and even people that are in your same state that you found out how awesome they are, right, Matt Miller? Segue Matt Miller.
Yes. Nicely
Shout
done.
out.
Yes. If that's okay, I'll jump in right after that. My inaugural experience with Twitter was sort of similar to Don's, in that I was at a conference when it really sort of started to take off, and I still say to this day, I mean, I do workshops with teachers a lot. In fact, I did one today. And I always say that the single most important thing I did as an educator was get connected to other educators on Twitter. And I mean, just the connections and the resources that I made. I'll give you one example. In my state, Indiana, you got a couple of Hoosiers here, and then Carrie's over in Illinois. So we're, you know, got the Midwest connection going on here. But so there's another teacher up in northern Indiana. I hadn't met her in person, but we had connected on Twitter, and we were going to be at a conference together. And so we said, we ought to present, because we had some similar views, and so we said we ought to present together. And so we had never met face to face, and we started trading ideas on a Google Doc, and we DM'd each other back and forth on Twitter. And the first time that I actually got to meet her in person was at the conference, which has its you know, it has its risks whenever you do it like that, but I just thought that it was fascinating that I could do that. Now, since we're talking about social media in the classroom also, I mean, I've had some really neat experiences with that too, being able to just connect with my students and share what's going on in my classroom through a class Twitter account and a class hashtag. And I'm really of the opinion that there is good stuff going on in the classroom every single day. The mainstream media doesn't pick up on it a lot of times, and education gets a bad rap. And by golly, if anybody is going to tell the message, if anybody is going to get the word out that education is amazing and there are great things happening in the classroom every day, this is how we have to do it. We have to share it through social media and through other means. It's our job to be the storytellers, and we can't let somebody else do it.
I love your spirit. I love it. Awesome.
Yes.
Who's next? Who wants to go?
Did somebody else say something?
Yeah. Go ahead,
I can go. So I think my journey is probably very different than most of the panel. I actually started as an anonymous blogger because I was terrified for anybody to learn that I actually was a teacher who blogged or wrote or tweeted about anything about my life. So that was about 3 or 4 years ago. So that's just about the time when I think educators really just started to dip their toes into the Twitter sphere. So I started that way, anonymous, as a mom blogger, and tweeted as a mom. And I made the most amazing connections with other mothers as my children were toddlers, sharing my stories and finding that I wasn't alone and that I had this big supportive community. And so as I became more confident with what I wanted to share and how much of myself I wanted to share, I slowly then saw other educators sharing and thought, well, you know, if they're sharing, then maybe I should share. And so all those moments that I had connecting with other mothers that were incredibly powerful to me just were reiterated when I connected with other teachers. I remember one of the most funny kind of 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. I shared a picture of some food on Twitter one time, and one of my mom blogger friends saw it and it was like, wow, I really like that too, and blah, 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 blah. And well, what do you know? Her husband was an assistive tech guy, ATT Tipcast in West Virginia. That was her husband, and I met him, and I got to do, you know, appear in their calendar and things like that. So it's really random just how Twitter can connect people in different ways, and it's just a really powerful tool. And I feel like it's made me a better teacher. It's made me more adventurous. It's allowed me to learn things that I never would have learned. And I feel like I'm pretty much self-taught when it comes to a lot of the technology and tools and things that I try in my class because of the people I meet and the things that I get to experience on Twitter that I never would have experienced otherwise. And it's just an amazing community. I mean, at this point, I can put out a tweet and any number of people could answer my question for me or be there to help me with something. And it's just amazing. And then my classroom, I had a student who had a severe learning disability, but Mel and Chris, the guy who does the AT Tipcasts, they also did Nightlight Stories, and so that was a podcast where they wrote their own original children's stories. Well, we did a Skype with them, and they were amazing, and it just enlightened the student's life, and being able to meet the authors of a podcast was just really crazy, and that never would have happened if I wouldn't have shared that picture of food on Twitter that one Friday night. So it's an amazing tool. It's amazing. I mean, it brings the world to you. And it just gives you, as a teacher, I think it gives you a community and people to support you and tell you that you're doing a good job and that your words are important and what you're doing has value, I think.
And we're going to talk about all the other social media as well, but one thing that you mentioned and you all have mentioned is Twitter, and one of my missions is to get more teachers onto Twitter somehow, some way, because it's, as you guys know, it's so rich in knowledge, and the educators are on there are amazing, and you can learn so much. You collaborate so freely and so fully with all these people. So, Joe, go ahead.
My Twitter experience is similar to others before me. So I had Friendster and Facebook, and those were all about just connecting with your friends, and it was definitely a social aspect. And so when Twitter was first coming out, and celebrities were using it, and news companies, I was thinking, well, why do we want to use Twitter in education, and what's so important about it? Why should we even use Twitter at all? And then I started, well, there's got to be a way to use it in education. And so my first dip into Twitter was using a classroom account. And so it's at Mr. Young's class. And it was a way to push information to the parents. Through the years, all the parents that I've spoken to, most of them have always said when they get home and they ask their kids, what did you do or what did you learn today? They'll say, I forgot. So the way I pitched it at Back to School Night is, rather than waiting to Friday's newsletter to find out what your kid did this week, you can get a daily blast of what happened. So if the kids say, oh, I forgot, I don't know. So, it looks like you learned about such and such today. And then so then, oh yeah, that's right. And so then it really promotes that homeschool connection and that conversation at home. So classroom account, definitely a great way. I was pushing information. It eventually became a two-way thing where parents were then tweeting back to us and we were answering questions. And one thing that I swore I would never do was tweet about food, but we went on a field trip to a science camp, and it was an overnight field trip. And for that field trip, I did tweet the food. And the parents later on told me, oh, I'm so glad that you tweeted the food because I can tell what my child ate, and I'm so glad they're fed and they're doing well. And so that was really cool. And then, of course, I got my own professional account and connected with lots of teachers. I say this often in the various education chats that when anybody talks about Twitter, it's the best self-initiated professional development that you can have. That anytime you want to, you just jump on a chat, or you can just reach out to your professional learning network and lean on them, having questions, or someone's throwing a question out and you can just share your ideas. But a great professional development, and it's self-initiated. Anytime you want. Whenever I give workshops, I use the analogy of it being an ever-flowing stream. That sometimes, you might not want to step in the water right now. You just do whatever you want. And then sometimes, let me see what's on the water or what's in the Twitter feed. And so you step in the stream and you just dip your toes in. And so it's definitely by choice, and it's self-initiated. So great. It's been powerful for me for my professional development, and of course in the classroom. Nice.
And Zach, tell us about your experience.
Yeah, well, it sort of segues nicely off what Joe was saying. Self-initiated professional development, the idea of professional learning networks, or your own personal learning communities are one of the things I'm really interested in. One of the things I'm interested in exploring more and learning about. I guess to bounce back to my inaugural Twitter experience, like everyone else has been talking about, mine was surprisingly recently. I would say with other social media, I was fairly quick to hop on the bandwagon, with things like MySpace and Facebook and whatnot. But for some reason with Twitter, I was a little late to the party, I guess you could say. I didn't really hop onto that bandwagon until about 6 months ago or so, and that was really at first just to promote my podcast. But with that said, I did use other forms of social media definitely to help me out with teaching. I used websites like Teachers Pay Teachers to go there and get lesson plans, ideas, and stuff like that. But I was sort of just a consumer of content, just sort of one way like that. But now I love using Twitter. Like other people have mentioned, it's just a never-ending source of information. It's a great way to sort of personalize your professional development and really, look for information that suits the individual, strengths and needs of your students. And you can also put stuff out there that's also helpful. It's something that as a classroom teacher, I don't quite incorporate into the classroom as much as I'd like to. But, I feel like maybe, tonight I'll hear about some interesting ways that I could perhaps be doing that.
Cool. Okay, so let's go on, you guys. The next topic that I'm hoping you guys have some cool stuff to share is most effective and creative uses in the classroom. I know the new thing is Periscope, and I'm wondering what your experiences with all that is, and in the classroom, and how is that being used? Twitter, Pinterest seems to be popular as well with elementary teachers. How is that being used as a visual method? So I see Carrie smiling. I think she has something to say. Carrie?
Well, I'm a little bit of a Pinterest addict. Not an addict, but it definitely is a rabbit hole for me. If I get on there, then I have to be careful that I pull myself back out. But I actually use Pinterest as my own personal bookmarking tool. So I know other educators have used Diigo and things like that, but I really like Pinterest because I'm a very visual person. So I'm looking for something, I just look for the picture, and it's easy for me to keep track of information and also share other resources with other educators. I do have a Pinterest board that I pin things just for parents. And I'm able to put that widget on my my Weebly blog so that when parents come there, if they wanted to go to that board, they could see resources that I've pinned for them. And I think that's that helps as a resource for parents. And it's easy to pin or just it's easy to share just certain boards with people. So I find that Pinterest can be a good way to collect information and then also share with other people too. So I do like Pinterest for just just keeping track of my own information. And then I just, like I said, I do use it on my blog just to share my classroom blog to share with parents information for them.
Nice. Who else? Dawn?
Yeah, you mentioned Periscope. We've been using that in the innovation class, which I probably should take an explanation of what that is. But
yeah, tell us about it.
Yeah, the innovation class is, if you know what Genius Hour 20% time is, that's the class. Actually, we got letter back from the state of Indiana. We actually have an official course title now. It's Innovation in Open Source Learning. And essentially what the kids do is they choose their projects. They substantiate it by finding the standards that they're going to master. We work with mentors, quite literally now, from all over the world. And then they do what they say they're going to do. So it's a crazy... actually, it's the most obvious thing in the world in education. Everybody needs to have an innovation class. That's another show. But essentially, one time I was doing a class, and then one lady says, "Man, if I could be a fly on the wall in your class, I'd love to see what goes on," because I'm a big fan of them showcasing everything. I mean, there's a lot of people that talk about change in education, and it's curious. A lot of those people have never seen any evidence from their classroom. So I'm like, I really want to push it out and to like see what they do. And so when Periscope, actually when Meerkat first came out, somebody described it as being a fly on the wall. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's what she was talking about. So we decided to do just that. So like when we'd have our open lab time, when they're experimenting, when they're working on something, even when they're like Skyping with another person, we'd throw it up on Periscope. And it's hilarious because sometimes there'll only be 10, 12 15 people on in a certain time, and it's amazing that the people that are normally following are helpful, and sometimes they're like, hey, your student's doing it wrong, or hey, I know what they're doing, they need to do this, and then and because it's archived for a while, some people go back and watch it, and it's been great. But I think the other most overlooked tool, which is my favorite, is YouTube. Everybody talks about social media as being, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. YouTube is the greatest thing ever. And one, because I have students have video skills, because I don't care if they go to work for Lowe's. If you have video skills, some manager is going to be like really appreciative that you have video skills. But it's also a great way to, like, Matt alluded to it earlier. When we want to change the narrative, when we're upset about the media coverage that we're not getting, the quickest way to do that is to show people what your students are capable of. And I'm quick to pick up the phone and call a local news organization, have them come out. But if they don't, well, fine. Because when our students are doing great things, and that, by the way, that's also drives me nuts. Like every now and then you'll hear about some really great, amazing project somewhere, and I'm like, let's see it. Let me literally see it. Pick up a camera. So you either can do that live for a Periscope or archive it and YouTube the heck out of it.
And who else wants to jump in? Matt?
Yeah, I'd love to. So as far as Periscope goes, first of all, I'm fascinated by what Don had to say. And by the way, it doesn't surprise me a bit that you're already starting to tap into that. And so I think that's so cool. I actually just started playing with it a little bit yesterday, and I think as far as a professional sharing model, I think that could be huge, just because it instantly gives everybody a voice. It gives them, It's almost like giving them your own TV show that you can go broadcast your ideas out on. And that's one of the things that I love about social media, is that everybody has a platform. And if you're willing to work at it even just a little bit, you can take whatever it is that you're passionate about, whatever message it is that you have in your heart, and you can share it. And you don't need a book publisher, you don't need a TV network, you don't need a radio station, you don't need a magazine, you don't need any of that stuff. And this is just as good, if not better, than all of that stuff. So there's that. I want to talk about YouTube too. Very much by the inspiration of Don and Joy Kerr over in Illinois and several other people, I tried Genius Hour for the first time this year in my AP Spanish classes. And so I had a couple of really cool projects, but my favorite one was this kid who is a whiz at the guitar. And he created this YouTube channel full of these instructional videos of how to play the guitar, and he did all of them in Spanish. He read, nice. All of the text, all the narrative all the explaining was in Spanish. And what I loved about that was, first of all, it was in the language, but second of all, the real specific vocabulary he had to learn was amazing, and it's something that I never, ever, ever would have taught him. And that's the kind of stuff I think that comes out of Genius Hour. And to be able to pull social media into that is cool also. And then I want to tell one other thing really quick if I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I want to share my screen while I do that, because I wrote a post about this, and I want to use it kind of as a visual aid. So can you see the blog post that I just pulled up?
Yes.
Okay, good. So here's my class, and we're out in rural agricultural Indiana, and lots of kids in my classes like hunting. And so when it comes to homecoming week, there are all of these dress-up days. And while Duck Dynasty was really popular, surprise, surprise, out in the country with these kids, we had a Duck Dynasty dress-up day. And if you look at some of these kids, I'm going to try to make, I'm going to make it bigger.
Oh, there.
Look at these two guys on the left. They are in full ghillie suits.
Oh, my God.
This guy here in the green shirt has his official Cy Robertson tea jug and teacup that you can see on the show. These guys were all about it. And so we use that as an opportunity to tie it into my class. I'm a Spanish teacher, and we were talking about members of the family, that vocabulary. And so we charted out the Robertson family tree on the board. And sort of on a whim, I said, you know what we ought to do? We ought to take a picture of this and tweet it to some of the guys from Duck Dynasty and just see what happens. Probably nothing, right? So let me scroll down here real quick. So there's the tweet. It says Robertson family tree in Spanish class on Duck Dynasty Day, and we tagged Willie and Jace, who are the two main brothers in it. And so there you can see what happened next. I don't know if you can see that very well, but right under my tweet it says, retweeted by Jace Robertson. This was huge to my kids. Yeah, because at the time, I mean, obviously they all watch the show. Look at all of the shirts. I mean, you can tell they know exactly who this guy is. They talked about this for weeks. And the other thing that was cool about it was that Jace Robertson had about 1 million Twitter followers at that moment. And so their picture got tweeted out to 1 million of their followers, and you can even see the statistics still on there now, 136 retweets and 198 favorites. And those kids knew about those statistics. They knew exactly what that meant. And so every day they kept coming in to me and saying, how many tweets are we up to? How many retweets? How many favorites are we up to? And so, I mean, even though there were only so many ties back into our curriculum through that, it validated their studies, that we put that out there and it was worthwhile to somebody that they valued. So those are some of my cool experiences with social media.
And as a teacher, you spoke directly to your audience, so you knew who. Yeah, so that's amazing. Love it.
Exactly, and the connections that I had with the students after that definitely helped.
Yeah, that's really cool. Let's go on. If you guys have, do you guys have anything else to add to that? As far as anyone else uses Pinterest? Matt, how do you use Pinterest?
I'm trying to point to Joe. Joe's got his
Joe.
I have my hand up. I didn't want to interrupt your comment.
Yeah.
I'm going to echo things. I used Mystery Skype last year, Mystery Hangouts. The Genius Hour was amazing for my students. They love being able to investigate and just like really get into their passions. A big thing that my school district, we use Schoology as our learning management system, and that's really been powerful to have that way for students to get a chance to get onto what looks like Facebook. It has the user interface of Facebook, but it allows you to connect with their peers. I'm connecting with a lot of teachers through Schoology. From there, also, my students then decided that they wanted to create their own little community, and just not just in Schoology's course, but we are a Google Apps for Education district as well, and so my students just took it upon themselves to create a classroom Google Plus community. And when the school year ended and the Schoology course had to close, and so the kids couldn't communicate through the Schoology course, that Google Plus community was there, and they can continue to contact each other, share pictures. So that was really powerful, and that whole thing is just all about empowering students to make those choices. That Genius Hour, the Mystery Hangout, Mystery Skype, where they run it, and then of course Genius Hour, where they discover things. This example of them using social media on their own to create that Google Plus community was really, really powerful. One more thing just to share is that I also use Instagram for the classroom, just sharing pictures that way. I didn't use that as much as my classroom Twitter account, because obviously you can include pictures onto your tweets, but Instagram was also another thing that I used.
And I think it's very popular with the kids.
Yeah.
Last year we used I got more. I just met some of my students for innovation right before summer started, and we had them. Like one of the big things we train them is to find great opportunities, and that's kind of our mantra, as opportunities are everywhere, because especially when you have like an entire Genius Hour class, it's up to you to find out a lot of the things. And so I had them over the summer, hashtag OAE Proj, Opportunities Are Everywhere project, and they loved it because I didn't say, like I said, if you just want to carry groceries for a nice lady, or if you find an opportunity to Skype with a CEO, like use Instagram, and I kind of want to monitor, you know, your success on finding opportunities all summer, and that they liked Instagram so much more just for the, you know, the chance to take a picture. So yeah,
Instagram. You guys, and as an aside, Don and Matt, you guys that are awesome published authors and with these amazing books, I definitely want to recruit you to talk about Genius Hour in a future episode. So please come back for that. Yeah, so
You got it.
sure.
all right,
I'm
awesome.
sure we could get Joy on too. Joy teaches at the middle
Yeah.
school in my district. So
Yeah,
I can ask
that'd be
her
great.
Or,
Oh, Joy's in your
reach out
district?
to her.
Yeah, she's the queen.
That would be
She's a neat
awesome.
lady. Yeah, she's very neat.
Yeah. So, guys, let's talk about if you guys have anything else to add before that. Trends, cautionary tales, and shout out. So, trends, you know, we've already talked about Periscope, like what's happening with that. One thing that that it seems to be happening, and I've read a few articles, and you guys can vouch or correct me, but it seems that, you know, Don, you were talking about YouTube. It seems that YouTube is getting ready to live stream as well. I mean, we're doing a live stream here, but it seems that they're going to make it easier for people to live stream the way Periscope does and Meerkat does. So that
Yeah.
should be interesting.
And actually, we were talking about that in class because, you know, sometimes people are like, hey, I really enjoyed this, you know, save it to your camera roll and then upload it to YouTube. And then I was like, you know, we could just do a YouTube stream and then it's automatically archived. So I think Periscope might be short-lived just because YouTube is king. And yeah, the fact that it won't just be archived for 24 hours.
Right.
It'll be, yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting thing happening with that for that reason, for what you said. So you guys, any as far as any other stuff that you see social media trending as far as what's happening, what's changing in the classroom? We mentioned YouTube possibly streaming and taking over that live streaming
I think the
aspect.
biggest cautionary tale I have, and it bugs me, and it's nobody on here, that's for sure, is just that there's this connected educator push, and that's cool, but we're at a point where we're either going to be an echo chamber or we're going to grow. And the thing that really stands out to me is some of the people that are really saying connected educator, follow people back. You know, if you have 150,000 followers and you're following back 50, you're sending the message that, well, what I have to say is really important and what you have to say is not. See, I don't have to hear from you. You just have to hear from me. That's going to turn people off because the people, I mean, heck, in listening to all of your stories, the person that introduced us social media, like, took us by the hand and was helpful and all that good stuff. So those people are, I mean, so, like, again, the echo chamber of, you know, once we all fall in love with Twitter and we all agree it's great, but if it can't grow past that, because once people just get on, I wrote about it in my book, and I talk about, you know, because Twitter's a bird, owls, crows, and hawks. I mean, you can be an owl, you can lurk in, you can be quiet, and I'd prefer you be a crow, and it's us here. You know, we like talking and we're social and we like saying things back and forth. But hawks are just jerks. I can't get past it. I just don't understand when, you know, because there's lists. Because I had a couple people tweet me back like, well, you know, I only follow a couple people because that's all I want to follow. And like, you know, I don't want it to get too crowded. Well, then create a list of people you want to follow more closely. Because and I, you know, I'll run across some little nuggets of wisdom from a person I've never had contact with, but I follow them back because they said they're an educator. Right. And if we're not careful, and Matt's the king of supporting people and doing this. I wish I could draw. Matt can draw.
Anybody can draw, right, Matt?
Yes, anybody. Yes, it's a skill. Practice it.
You'll see my drawing someday and go, I stand corrected. But no, I mean, yeah, it's just, I mean, if you're going to be on, you know, Twitter, just be a crow, man. Don't be a hawk. I just want to say that from the mountaintops is that, you know, we're going to turn people off if the people keep saying, oh, well, you've got to fill in your favorite name.
Yeah.
And like, well, I did follow them and I tweeted at them and they didn't get back with me. So screw this connected educator. It's not really connected. It's a cult of celebrity.
Right.
Yeah.
I do agree with Don. I wrote a post about that too, and I think the same goes for blogging. And I found that, when I come from from the mothering, when I started with that, and the community was just so rich with comments and feedback and supportiveness. And then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, it's time to follow other educators who blog, and I expected the same kind of fill me up from educators when I left comments and really trying to get to know them. And I found it was like a dead end. And I'm like, why are you sharing your words with me if you don't want to give them back, and I share with you and you don't want to give them back to me? It just,
Right.
So it's different with the blogging, but it's the same as what Don said with the Twitter. If you're going to be out there sharing, it's for connections, if we're going to put ourselves out there, we need to give back. And if people are new, it's our job to help build those relationships and really give them that feeling of filled upness that we get from connecting with each other.
Yeah.
I just think it's really important for us to be there for each other. That's why we should be doing that.
I agree. I've started to try to follow a rule that I heard recently from there's a guy named John Carripo out in California, and his personal rule about Twitter is if you tweet to me, I will tweet back to you. So
Yeah.
I go down my notifications, and if it's something a little bit more than, maybe just sharing one of my blog posts or something, I always try to send something back, even if it's just a thank you or that's awesome or something, or I try to do something a little bit more deep. But it's those little things, those build relationships, they build other people up, they create that kind of community that we want to have, I think.
And it's about being generous. It's about
Right.
collaborating. The same kind of atmosphere is what I like on here. On this program, I've had teachers that have been teaching 1 year to veteran teachers and experts on this topic or that topic, and they all get to come on and speak to each other and collaborate and talk to each other. And those newer teachers have innovation of their own. They may have certain things that they do differently that might shed some light on what you're doing. The same thing on Twitter, the same thing everywhere in social media.
Well,
May I add one
Go
quick?
ahead.
go ahead, Joe. Go ahead.
There's let's see. There's a professor somewhere, I don't really recall where she's out of Pennsylvania, I believe. She's doing an education course for pre-service teachers, undergrads who are interested in going into education, and we did a partnership and a virtual collaboration. So she wanted to pair up one of her pre-service teachers to one who was already in the field, and I just had tweets with the teacher I got paired up with, and she was saying, how do you build a PNL, a professional learning network? And I said, participate in as many chances as you can, follow people that make an impact on you, and don't worry about people following you back, because it's not a popularity contest, but it's great if they do, because then you can then create that collegiality, that give and take with them. But I really my advice to her was get beyond the whole psychological piece of wanting to see that number of followers increase, and just get to the place where you can follow people that would make an impact on your career. So hopefully, that's the message I usually give to people, that it's really about what you make out of it. And of course, as Don said, if you have a lot of followers and you follow just a few, what does that say about you too, right? So
yeah. Good point. I think this is one of the best parts of the show, talking about this and the collaboration. How about so guys, let's talk about, Carrie, you had something else to add to that. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just right before. I was just thinking that as we were talking about, how we interact with each other, and the give and take of the relationships and the community that you build on Twitter. I think that goes back to what we talked about with using social media and these tools in the classroom. We're also models for our students, especially if you have high school students or older students. They're watching you on there, whether they follow you or not. Yeah. We're models for our students and how we interact with people and how we use social media, and it's an instant digital citizenship way to show kids the power of it, how we can use it to connect with other people, and I think it's a really good way for us to model. Whether they're watching or not, we're modeling for ourselves, for our people who are the students, but we're also modeling for our peers about this is what it's meant to be. That it's supposed to be this rich community that's supposed to, I think it's supposed to fill you up with ideas and a connection with other people, and that's what makes it so powerful, is when you feel those types of feelings. And when you don't get that back, that's when we get turned off, and that's what makes it really, really hard. And so I think it's important for people who do feel like Don and, Matt, all of us, that we keep modeling that for people, that it's important that we, are there for each other and we make connections.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. I feel like I've experienced those connections before. As I mentioned earlier, I teach middle school special education. I teach kids with behavior problems, and they know that I make my podcast and they follow my Twitter account for it. And sometimes there are times where they'll remember something that I posted on Twitter more than they'll remember something that I told them in the classroom. So it's interesting how there's that connection, that it gets made. Maybe not in the way I wanted it to, but that connection does get made.
Yeah.
Whatever it takes, right?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Nice. Joe, this reminded me, the thought ran through my mind about the Mystery Hangout. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I had the privilege of learning about it last year from a colleague of mine, Ellen Kraska. She's now an administrator in Menlo Park, and she was a teacher on special assignment here in Palo Alto last year, previous years, and she introduced me to the idea. First I learned about it on Twitter, and I reached out to her saying, do you know much about it? And so she had this great resource and helped me set it up by looking at the different student roles and ways to set it up. And it's basically you find another teacher somewhere around the world. For me, it was a lot of people in the Eastern time zone, either in Canada or in the Eastern states, because of the time zone piece to it, that it makes it tricky to actually call into somebody in Asia, for example, right? So the teachers know where we are, and then we'll do a hangout or a Skype session, and the students are only asking closed-ended questions, yes or no, and it's about getting the students to learn about ways to narrow down the scope of where the other class is, and so it's really that higher level thinking of learning how to narrow things down. So being strategic with your questions, like, are you in North America? So you automatically just eliminated so many things if they said yes. And so using all the skills of strategic questioning, we have a role for someone on an atlas, a paper atlas, so that we can still utilize those atlas that we have in the class. We have an iPad person using Google Earth. We have Chromebook person researching things, and we have a record keeper that records all the questions that we ask, all the answers that we give, all the questions that they ask, and the answers we give. And a great way to learn about another class, as well as have that collaboration where the students just really work together.
That sounds like really fun.
Yeah, Matt can definitely speak about that, because I had the privilege, and Carrie said that as well, that we called into Matt when he was speaking to at a conference, and the adult learners needed to guess where we were.
Nice. Matt, share your wisdom. Tell us.
Yeah. Oh man, that's one of my favorite things to do. So I try to do these mystery Skypes or mystery location calls with teachers whenever I can, just because I really am convinced that Skype and Google Hangouts and FaceTime and all of that video chat stuff, that's one of the most powerful ways to use our technology to leverage to do things that we couldn't do before. And I kind of I think that mystery Skypes, where you're trying to guess where the other class is with yes and no questions, is this wonderful stepping off point to getting into bigger conversations with, in video. And I think that it's kind of like a combination of Battleship and 20 Questions. I can't claim ownership of that saying. I read it someplace, but I think it's so true. And it's great for elementary classes. I know of elementary classes that have tried to mystery Skype other classes in every single state in the United States and have succeeded. Nice. And even my high school kids absolutely love to do it. So I think if you're interested in bringing in, vantage points and perspectives from people in other states and other countries, it's a great starting off point. And that totally fits social media too. It's inherently social because it's people talking to people, right?
Right.
I'm going to just quickly add.
Go ahead.
So I've flipped my classroom with math instruction. I've blended my math instruction as well. I've always talked about how flipping really extends the learning beyond the 6 hours of your school day and the 4 walls. With Mystery Hangout and Mystery Meet, it does a powerful thing where we can cross boundaries and cross borders, and it's amazing to connect globally, or even just in the next state too.
Yeah, well, last year I totally agree with that. To model the behavior last year, the innovation class were built on, we have a driving question, and you a lot of times, at the beginning I show them how to write a proposal and backward design and do a calendar thing. So it's like let's do one project together really quick, and we had a driving question of what the heck is going on. If you remember last calendar year, it's like what the heck's going on in the West Bank.
I love this story.
Yeah, we were just talking and if you watch Fox News, all Palestinians are terrorists, and if you watch MSNBC, all Israel are terrorists, and there's got to be a middle ground. And so we're like okay, what are we going to do? And I said, let's talk to some people on the ground, and how can, because I said, let's Skype call. I'm like, well, how can you Skype call somebody in the West Bank? I'm like, I don't know, figure it out. And they go, well, you should tweet somebody. I'm like, no. This is your project. You guys do it. And it was amazing that within 2 days, and in some cases it was Twitter. So they took to social media, but some of them were just like they had a church that they went to, a church that they knew a guy that had a missionary that knew a guy. But within 2 days, we were doing Skype calls from people from both Palestinian side and the Israeli side. And it was incredible because what we found was both of them hated it. Neither of them were like, yeah, you guys are wrong. They were like, hey, you know what? We'd like to get along. This is terrible. And yeah, you talk about crossing boundaries. It was even my students, their jaw was dropping because they're like, this is really happening. And actually, I'm hoping I'm not giving away. I don't know if my students are watching live. But yeah, tomorrow, and I just put out some tweets just a while ago because, again, normally I like for them to find it, but it's going to be a little bit harder. We're looking at the Syrian crisis. How many people are trying to escape Syria because it's just so awful, and they're just stuck in these cities because they're not going to let them, into Eastern Europe. And so we're going to hope that we can make a Skype call with maybe, and ironically enough, this idea got going because a couple of my kids and I this morning were flipping through Periscope, and there's just somebody in Budapest this morning, just no commentary, just walking around Budapest and watching these people that were just sleeping on the ground. Some had tents, most of them were just sleeping on the street, and they're like, the empathy that created. And then one kid's like, we should really try to Skype call. Remember what your class did last year? Yes. You think we get yes? And so I'm really, but it might be a little bit more difficult because it's quite honestly, it's easier to find somebody in Israel than it is possibly in Jordan or in Budapest, but we'll give it a try.
Don, that's amazing. That's the best in innovation. I wish you had been my teacher. That's awesome.
Do you have any idea how jealous that I although that's the one thing, when we took our field trip last year, we led a charmed life last year. Last year we among the many things we got to do, we got invited out to Stanford and go present, and then we got to be guests at Google, and all these engineers would come up and they'd tell my kids where was this class 20 years ago? Why couldn't I have taken this class? And I know this is why though I'm living my dream, because I get to awesome. we throw around the terms like lifelong learner. I am so ignorant in so many different ways. They teach me so many things hey, one of my 16-year-old, I think he's 17 now, he wrote, actually he's in business, he wrote a pass writing system for schools that have one-to-one iPads. So instead of having hallway passes that are paper, he has an interactive pass system that students can request or teachers can request students at any time, and it also knows when you're at large too long, and he wrote it on himself, and so yeah, I know it's. I feel in some ways I feel stupid, but in other ways I feel alive because I get to peek over the shoulder hey, what are you doing? Oh, that's cool. So yeah, it's cool.
But you know what it is? It's actually being able to utilize the resources that you have nowadays, the technology, all the resources that you have, you're maximizing those. And I wish more teachers were, we want more teachers to be able to do that.
Well, then let me also put a shameless plug out.
Yeah,
this is what we call open source learning. I mean, this is, and if anybody watching out in the ether, if you guys want to connect with my students and have them, because when you talk about like a mystery Skype, like we just did a thing there was a bunch of 5th graders that came into our class yesterday, and they got to hang out with them, and they were pitching these ideas. And the funny thing is like the 5th graders, I mean, they're really, really creative, and so my high schoolers like, yeah, that's a really good idea. But if you guys ever wouldn't be a mystery, but if you guys want to Skype my students, they're a lot more entertaining than I am. So it's always open and available. And I got to give a big plug. Noblesville Schools allows me to do this. They want me to do it. They don't like, oh, okay, if you get on Twitter, they want us to be ultra transparent, because they think if we're proud of what you're doing, it's cool if your mom puts your stuff on your refrigerator, but how about the refrigerator be like global internet, things like that. And Nobles, they get it, man. I'm so jazzed to be working with them.
That's so great.
Yeah.
That is really cool. Okay, so
none of us would be this. Oh,
go ahead, Carrie.
Sorry. No, I was just going to say that none of us, I don't think any of us would feel the way we feel right now as educators if it wasn't for social media and the world being brought to us, that we can reach anything. I mean, we can go anywhere, do anything, learn anything. I've become fearless. I mean, and then just, I don't think any of us would be that way. Don, I mean, I don't think any of us would be how we are right now if it wasn't for the power of social media and our ability to connect and learn from others. I mean, I can peek inside other people's classrooms and go, you're doing that? I want that. And it just ups the bar and ups the bar and ups the bar more. And it just, and like Don said too, it just gives us a really great refrigerator, to share what we're doing too and allow other people to see and learn from us. But really, I think it's made us all really better at what we do, and even I think even more incredible than I think we could have thought we were, to begin with. I never thought that I'd be doing half the stuff that I thought. I'd just be teaching kids out of textbooks. I mean, geez, But it's amazing what we're doing as educators, because we're learning from each other all the time, and it's because of social media that we're allowed to do that. So
yeah.
One of the most consistent messages I've heard from teachers who join Twitter chats or join Twitter and then participate in Twitter chats is that they would say, why didn't I do this 10 years ago? Or why didn't I do this at least even a year ago? So it's been such an amazing experience.
And I think it's the tip of the iceberg. I'm aging myself a little bit, but I remember what a big deal it was when we first got Palm Pilot, and we could enter scores of the student and log that in. And teachers were resistant even then to just learn how to use that thing and all that. So I think there's still a lot ahead that we haven't seen that's going to be just as amazing or more. So maybe even a year from now we can update this show to see what's happened. So Don started with the shout out. So who else wants to let people know about great people to follow, or what things what projects they should be following, or what things they should be seeing? Who wants to do that? Go ahead, Joe.
So this is really just kind of continuing that whole idea of how Twitter is, or social media has been really powerful for teachers and professional development. I'm in a new role of being a TOSA, teacher on special assignment, basically an instructional coach. And TOSA Chat recently started up, and it was the idea from Coach Ben and Carly and Kelly and I just got together, and we planned it over the summer, launched it on September 17th, and we've only had 3 chats, and it's been amazing. Just a great way for coaches and TOSAs to get together and share ideas. And being in a coach and a TOSA role, it's like you're away from the classroom, but yet you're not in administration. So you're kind of in the middle, being a bridge to the both, and it can sometimes be a lonely place. And so that TOSA chat has been really successful, really powerful for us. So if there are coaches and TOSAs that are watching the show or watching on the YouTube channel later on, TOSA chat Mondays at 8 Pacific. So yeah, we designed it for Pacific time, but a great way to connect.
Spell that, Joe.
TOSA, TOSA CHAT. So TOSA chat.
Awesome.
And Matt, Carly says hi.
Hi, Carly. Awesome.
Matt, anyone else? Any shout outs? People we should follow or anything like that?
Oh my goodness. Everybody in this conversation, everybody in this show, there's greatness all the way across the board here, and I honestly just don't even know where to start. And that kind of the beauty here, I'll do this. The best way to find people to follow, I think, is to go jump into a hashtag that has your interest or that has something to do with what you do, and then go find all of the people in that interest you. So I think that's a really great way to find people. I'm not going to start naming people off because there are just so many really great ones out there. I wouldn't even know where to start.
Oh my gosh, Matt! I've got to echo that sentiment. That was my assignment yesterday, 4 days ago, and Klein knew that they felt were great followers or collaborators, and to message them saying, "I like what you do. I hope we can collaborate in the future." And not only do I recommend that for students, for teachers as well.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Oh, and also a shout out to Dave, my brother in education. He's in the San Luis Obispo area. David Preston, his Twitter is @PrestonLearning. You will hear more about what we are doing later, but he's not really an over Twitter guy. I wish he would be, because if people knew what he was doing, he would be celebrated, but I'll work on him. But David Preston Learning on Twitter.
Please do. He's got really, really good ideas. I've checked him out. That's a good follow. Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah.
Hey, just as an aside, I meant to bring this up earlier, but Carrie alluded to it a little bit about how she started Twitter and being anonymous at first. I'm not sure where you were at with that, Carrie, but I have experienced teachers as well that they're either shy or wary about collaborating. I don't know if that's the exception or it seems to be in certain places, but that's one thing that that's part of my mission, to get more of the teachers that have a lot of expertise, have a lot of really good stuff to share, but they're not sharing it because they haven't been introduced to it correctly, or they fear or are shy or anything like that. Can anybody speak to that? Carrie?
Well, I think for me, when I first started, it was different, but I also found, and I try to tell the teachers, and I have a couple of closer friends that always joke with me, and I always had my sharing rules. Like, I had my rules for what I was going to share on Twitter and what was off limits. And I think that, being anonymous, even still as an educator, if that's what makes you comfortable, I think it's okay, as long as we're being genuine and, forward. And when you find your footing and you find your voice, then you can start to share more of who you really are. But you never have to share anything you don't want to share, and I think it is important for educators to decide what message they want to share about themselves and decide what they're going to share and what they're not going to share. And what I share is, I think, even when I talk to some of my fellow teachers, is way more than they're ready to ever share. But that's just me. So I think it's okay for people to know that they only have to share what they want to share. But I think the biggest thing that teachers fear is that what they have to share is not important. And I think they undervalue what they do in the classroom, and they undervalue their ability to connect with other people. And I even find that's with my own struggle. Like, nobody's going to read this post. It's stupid. It's about this, but people want to hear what we're doing, and they want to connect with us. And I think that's also when I go to follow people on Twitter. I first of all don't limit myself to sometimes people that only have my personal views. I do like to hear a well-rounded view of education, so I might follow somebody sometimes that has a different view, just so I can kind of keep that message in my ear. But I also follow people that connect with you, that fill you up, that give you what you need back. And if they're not, then don't follow them. I think social media should give you back what you need and to help you become a better educator. So.
Right. Anyone else want to add to that? Okay. So you guys, we've come to the part of the show, actually, kind of coming back to Carrie. So the TeachCal Network has currently two Google Hangout shows that we are doing. It's this one, Teachers Talk Live, and we also have one on Tuesday headed by Dr. Greg Goins, and he does Going Digital shows. So this is a superintendent show in which they talk about all kinds of topics. Last night's was amazing, so check it out on teachcal.com. So the intent for TeachCal Network is to have these talks in a well-rounded manner, the leaders, the superintendents, and the leaders of the schools, and then the leaders in themselves, the teachers, having a talk on their own about education and where it's going, where it's headed, how can we collaborate. And I also want to bring on a parent aspect of it, and that's where Carrie comes in. So to tell us more about that, I'll let Carrie talk more about that.
Oh, thanks. No, so this came out of one of our beginning of summer talks, and really what Oscar and I want to do is, be able to connect parents to the classroom. And so it's going to start as a blog post, and then hopefully morph into something blog nature, and then maybe into a podcast. But really, what I want to do is take what we talk about here on Teacher Talk Live and then give the parent flip on it. So the first post that we're going to have live, and it's called the Parent Zone, educational resources for parents to take and go with, take and go. So I want it to be quick and fast and to the point, kind of like a parent going through the drop-off line at school. They should be able to listen to the vlog or read the blog post while they're waiting in line to pick up their kids. It should be that fast. And so this first post is the flip side of how parents can use social media to be better parents and how to stay connected with their schools. And so I'll be following Oscar's lead and taking the flip side of whatever he talks about here on Teacher Talk Live, and bringing parent perspective and resources so parents can be more empowered and connect with educators and the resources that we have at our hands.
So that's really cool and exciting. So all this stuff is going to be going on at teachcal.com. So speaking of future episodes, September 9th, we have a big episode coming up on bullying on campus. And we already have some really cool experts coming on to talk about that. And I'm still trying to see if I can get I think I have a student secured that's going to speak about their experience with bullying. If you guys can, if you know of any more that could speak to that experience as well, it'd be cool to get the student perspective on that. And then Going Digital show on September 15th, that's going to be about the maker movement. So really excited about that show. So this is all on teachcal.com. Before we go, I really want to thank everyone for being on. I think, some really amazing people have come on. So if you guys have anything else to add, anyone want to talk about anything else that we left out?
I will real quick. I wrote a post a little while back, and I'll kind of zoom through this real quick, but I know sometimes talking about social media, sometimes if a teacher or a school wants to post about things that are going on and they go, well, I'm not exactly sure what I should post. what kind of post should I do? I want to show this real quick, and I'll just go through these really fast. This is a post called 7 kinds of social media posts that educators in schools can use right now. And so if you're trying to figure out what it is that you could post, let me kind of scroll down through these and read them to you real fast. So the first one is share a resource. So if you've got articles or how-tos or data or resources or, I mean, just anything, that's a good thing to do. Secondly, repost somebody else's post. So if somebody else has put something out there, you can always share that. And of course, you want to give credit where credit is due. There's make an announcement. If there's some sort of event that's coming up or news or something, this is a great place to post that. Number 4, reveal something personal. I know in brands, at least, it says let's not get to the TMI, the too much information category here. But getting personal to a healthy degree is really important, because if we're able to see what, brands, being classes and schools, what they're really about and the people that make them up, that's really, really important. I've got 3 more. Report on what you're doing now. Just whatever is happening in the moment, take a picture of it or write a post about it and just let people know what's going on. Ask a question. If you want to engage with the people that are following you, ask a question and just see what they say. And then finally, offer congratulations. I think that's another way to go out, is just to recognize people that are doing really good things. And so, I had that up and I wasn't sure where it was going to fit, so I thought I might squeeze that in at the end if somebody's going, awesome. This sounds like something I want to do, I'm just not sure where to start. Maybe that's a good place to start.
That's really cool. The one that struck me the most is revealing something personal. My go-to is me and my pups. So.
Yes, that's important. People want to see that stuff.
Yeah.
It makes it personal. Yeah, it's easy. And you never know, just that one little tidbit. That food picture on a Friday night. You never know where it could take you. The connections it can make.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. So everyone, the show comes back on September 9th, Wednesday, and you can find past episodes on teachcow.com and use the hashtag EduLive. When referring to the show and ideas for the show. We're always open to more ideas. So thank you very much for coming on, you guys. You guys have been terrific. So thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tune in to our live interactive programming every Wednesday at teachcow.com. You may email us at teachcow@gmail.com, under Twitter at teachcow, Facebook teachcow, and Google Plus Oscar Staten. On the website, you may find our other social media at teachcow.com. And if you would like to become a panelist on our show, we welcome you to contact us through teachcow.com. Thank you very much.